All right, so we are now live. Good evening, everybody. It's yours truly, Dr. Pierre, your favorite board certified internist. Welcome to another episode of the Real Physician Reacts. If this is your first time catching this is my weekly show where I come on and I talk about either some current event, something that's really bothering me at the time, something that comes across either my email, my text message thread, or it hits one of my social media inboxes, and I just kind of give the opinion from a physician standpoint. Now, this week is going to be a little different. And I've said this before, especially if you're a part of the Lunch and Learn community, you've been following me forever. A part of my, educational background, not only is that I have a doctorate in osteopathic medicine, more importantly, I have a master's in public health. And I have been on record to say that I believe, again, this is just my opinion, I believe that that public health degree by far has made me a much better physician than all of the training I've had over this year, right? And we're going on like a decade plus since I got out of residency, which is kind of crazy to think about. So when I talk about the public health hat, like today we got the public health hat. Like I'll be able to give some, some viewpoints, especially from a physician standpoint, but the public health hat is on full this evening, right? So we are going to be talking about the most recent, and I do have to say the most recent water crisis here in the United States occurring as we speak at the time of this recording in Jackson, Mississippi. And I want to give a clip. We're going to start with a clip from the governor of Mississippi, and then we'll get to the business, right? So let's start with a clip, because I think, especially from our standpoint, especially if for some reason you're unaware of what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi, this will give you a nice little inside look of what's happening.
Is a very different situation from a boil water notice, which is also a serious situation which residents of Jackson have become tragically numb to. Until it is fixed, it means we do not have reliable running water.
The water is not safe to drink, not even say it's not safe to brush your teeth with, because we are not seeing adequate coordination and inability to consistently disinfect the water.
Like, let me stop there, right? Y'all know I was gonna do this. So not only is the water not safe to drink, not even safe to brush your teeth with. And full disclosure, Jackson, Mississippi has been on a boiled water precaution since July. Since July, Jackson, Mississippi has had the residents in Jackson, Mississippi has had to boil their water since July. This most recent, and the reason why we're now calling it a crisis is because now boiling the water is don't even touch it. Like, don't even brush your teeth with it. Don't even attempt to take a shower and keep your mouth open. That is how bad the water is. Just again, I wanted to make sure we didn't miss that little, because he slid that in there, and that's sad more than anything else. You can't even brush your teeth. But I like this guy because he gives some perspective, which I think is extremely important, especially when we're talking about the water crisis here in Jackson. He gives some great perspective. So let's take a listen.
Actually, I always try to stock up on water supplies, because that's stuff that don't spoil. He always told me a snake can't bite you if you see it first. There was a double whammy. But I look at Katrina, what they had to go through. I mean, our situation it's nothing like what they experienced. I mean, this is misdemeanor. I mean, think, my God, how many people died and was discomforted and relocated behind that. So it's when you get through a situation like this, you always got to think about it could be worse.
So I just want to stop the video there. Let me get back on my screen. So here we have the governor, who essentially says, hey, y'all, Jackson, Mississippi, don't drink the water. You have a person in some national health prominent say, you know what, don't even brush your teeth with the water. The situation has gotten that bad. the fact that they had to boil water was a common occurrence. You heard that one of the residents mentioned that, like, oh, I always stock up on water because you never know when this is going to happen. Like, he is living in a place where he is used to the fact that, you know what, I may not be able to trust the water that comes out of the faucet. Like, that is a reality. And I'm seeing a lot of people across timelines saying, wow, how can this happen here? How can this happen here? I can't believe this is happening in the United States. And we're going to talk about those people, but like, how quickly do we forget that, one, this isn't our first water crisis. Remember Flint. Two, it's not as if they were able to drink the water with no issues before. Now the only problem is that now even boiling it isn't enough. Like, that is how severe this situation got. So let's give some background on what occurred, what led to it. Can we blame anyone? But I want to show you know me. I like showing some videos, right? Because I want to make sure we're getting this perspective as far as, you know, how significant this is from a global perspective. So this is where the public health hat comes in. Globally, we have a water problem. So if we globally have a water problem, of course we got a water problem here in the United States, but globally we have a water problem. So I want to go to this website. Is called water.org. Definitely a website you probably want to check, especially if you may have been like, surprised that, even here in the United States, even though you shouldn't, because if you remember Flint, you definitely should not. But you may be surprised of how much even here in the United States a water problem can arise. So again, this is water.org. Definitely a good one. So I'm gonna read this just so we can kind of get a gist. Globally, 771 million people lack access to safe water. 1.7 billion people don't have a toilet. 1 million people die each year from water, sanitation, and hygiene-related diseases, which could be reduced with access to safe water or sanitation. Let's watch this quick video right here, just so we can get So again, just wanted to kind of highlight that I think for a lot of people, when we talk about a global water crisis, when we just talk about water crisis, I think this is the picture that people tend to get, that this is a third world country issue, that this is an issue where they don't have toilets and not, like, this is their problem. So when you see it on our footsteps, on our land, and I always say, especially here in the United States, we are very geocentric in our way of thinking. So when we see it happen here, we're like, wow, like, I can't believe this is happening. And everywhere in the world is like, of course it's happening. So again, hand washing saves lives. I definitely want to hit on this because I've been talking about COVID and washing hands and wearing masks. Like, I think a lot of people were surprised how often people don't really wash their hands. So you'd be surprised. So it's not a shock to me, the amount of people who didn't get as sick as they used to get once we had hand sanitizers everywhere. Because I'm sorry, a lot of y'all are not washing your hands. So 2.3 billion people globally, that's 3 out of 10 people, do not have access to soap and water to wash their hands at home. Access to safe water directly helps the most vulnerable families around the world prepare and protect themselves from illness and disease. Right? Like, just think about this. A children's health crisis. Safe drinking water is critical to the development of a healthy child. It means kids won't experience waterborne illnesses like typhoid, diarrhea. One of the top 3 leading causes of child death is often triggered from consuming unclean water. 160 million children suffer from stunting and chronic malnutrition, which has been linked to access to safe water sanitation. Y'all, again, I wanted to talk about that from a global perspective. Again, like I said, we got the public health hat on this evening, but I wanted to talk about this that yes, Jackson, Mississippi, Flint, and there's a lot of other parts in this country that if something really happened, like a weather storm or something tragic, we would see that a lot of other, probably prominent cities in this country are dealing with some of the same issues of concern associated with what's happening just with this microcosm that's happening in Jackson, Mississippi. Let's go back to this Time magazine, because I want to talk about just, how did we get here? What are some of the issues? What are some of the concerns? And, what do we have to see next, right? Let me shrink that a little bit. Okay. So it talks about how 180,000 residents in and around Jackson, Mississippi, the largest city, state capital, largest city in Mississippi, have little or no sanitary water for the foreseeable future. And until it is fixed, we do not have a reliable source of running water at scale. The city cannot produce enough water to fight fires, to flush toilets, and to meet other critical needs. Again, when we talk about how this water problem is a significant problem, it's not about filtering. It's like you can't do anything else because you don't have the water to do what a lot of us take for granted. Again, imagine not being able to flush your toilet, right? Because there's not enough water. The state health department has warned that tap water is not even safe to brush your teeth or to give the pets. So pet owners, if maybe you didn't have sympathy for the area of Jackson, but maybe you only have sympathy for your dogs. There are dogs and cats who can't drink right now, can't drink no water right now out the sink or out the faucet, out anywhere, because it's so unsafe, right? So again, for the pet owners, that may be a way we can kind of bring the pet owners in. It is crazy how much you underestimate the way water makes the world go round until you don't have it or can't use it, says Macy Brown, a community activist and organizer in Jackson. And I think we're actually going to be highlighting some of her tweets later on today. So let's talk about what happened. Like, how did we end up here? Again, I mentioned that they were already on a boil notice. They were already boiling their water, but again, they still could take a shower. They could still flush the toilet. Now they can't do any of that. Recent flooding, operational failures, and understaffing at the treatment plant. And I think this is the most important, and I don't want this to get, brushed under the side. Decades-long infrastructure decay have resulted in the crisis that we're dealing with today. And this is one of, a lot of times where we talk about where if you don't do something right and you try to just push it off to the next person, eventually someone is going to have to deal with the consequence. They have been trying to deal with this issue of a poor infrastructure for decades. So for decades, they've been trying to deal with a poor water infrastructure that feeds the largest city in the state. And for decades, they couldn't get it done. For decades, they couldn't get it taken care of. Let's go back to our article. And again, remember, the article will be in the description. Let me see here. Let's go down. The O.B. Curtis Water Treatment Plant is a facility that serves Jackson and has been relying on backup pumps since the main pumps failed last month. Now, let's think about this, y'all. Did anyone here, let me focus on myself. Did any of y'all hear any news about the main pumps in Jackson, Mississippi failing about a month ago? Like, how many of us, especially if you're watching this or you happen to watch, when my VAs do hit, clip this up, how many of you actually knew that Jackson was already on a boil water notice before this news, right? So imagine that a boil water notice for an extended period of time doesn't make the news. Like, that is how common it is over there in Jackson, Mississippi. You heard the resident say, hey, I always stock up on water because you never know when this is going to go down. Like, he was so used to not being able to trust the water, that he made sure he had to stock up on some water. Let's go back. Again, this is sad for so many different reasons. It just is, right? It's ridiculous more than anything else. In fact, let me see if I can zoom in, make it a little bit. Yeah, make that. I want to make the screen a little bit bigger for you guys. All right. Get that out of there. Okay. Again, the Curtis Treatment Plant facility serves Jackson. The main pumps failed last month due to what I guess the Pearl River, which began flooding this past weekend. And what occurred is once that river began flooding, it then damaged the backup pumps that they were already relying on since a flood damaged the main pumps prior. Right. And that's where residents lost water pressure altogether. And again, the facility has had ongoing issues with, and this is the thing about this, understaffing, right? So they didn't even have enough employees to run the plant. So not only do you have a plant that is faulty, that is decaying, where the infrastructure is terrible, you don't even have enough employees to run that entire plant. Like, this is crazy. And of course, thankfully, President Biden had to step up and declare it a national emergency, a federal emergency, and that's going to be able to get resources. When we talked about when the federal government has to declare an emergency, how that helps the local municipalities, because now the federal government is able to maybe absorb some of that cost that, you know, the state of Mississippi either wasn't going to absorb or wasn't allowed or couldn't afford it, whatever reasons. Right. And now they're able to split some of the costs and be able to get some, you know, some much needed support there, especially for our residents out there in Mississippi. And I like this where it talked about meteorologists have reported like this flooding wasn't even like the worst flood. So it wasn't even the worst flood that they've experienced. But when you're already dealing with it on the reserve pumps, on the backup pumps, of course, this is what happens. Right. So again, thankfully, President Biden declared that state of emergency. And again, this is where I kind of mentioned that Jackson had already been on a boil notice since July in that regard. So, and I want to kind of mention here, I think this paragraph is probably more important and kind of hit me when I read it. Jackson has struggled with safe water access for decades and has lacked the funding to implement change. Mayors and city council members have called for repairs since the 1940s. Think about this, y'all. The 1940s, they've been trying to get this taken care of. In the 1940s, they could not get this taken care of. In the 1970s and again in 1920, the EPA warned that the city had to get serious about updating its infrastructure to improve water quality. Again, like it's not. And again, this is what I want to let me focus on myself again, and I want people to understand this. This is a known issue. No one in Mississippi, no one, especially from a federal government standpoint, is shocked that this water crisis has essentially wiped out a whole city from their water. No one is shocked. They've been talking about it for decades, since the 1940s. But unfortunately, and again, this is the way our system works, especially here in this country. Unfortunately, it's the state's job to take care of it. It ain't the government's job to come down and fix it for them. The state has to run it, and the state has to do it, unless, right, a federal emergency erupts and they got to step in. But like with the checks and balances, the federal government can't just go in there and say, "Oh, this is what I'm gonna do for you." So this is again, the residents knew, the city officials knew, the government knew, everyone knew that, hey, Jackson, Mississippi, like that water plant y'all got going over there. Yeah, that's going to be a problem for y'all one day. And unfortunately, in the year 2022, the one day has occurred today, right? Let's go back to the articles, finish reading up the article a little bit. The 2020 report highlighted lead pipes, faulty monitoring equipment, and insufficient staffing. Years of neglect have built up, and in 2021, the city had dozens of boil water notice due to the old, fragile water system. Again, in the year 20, like let's say that out loud, y'all. In the year 2021, Jackson, Mississippi, the largest city in Mississippi, had to have over a dozen boil water notices. Like if we just ponder our head for a second and think how wild that sounds. And again, it happened in Flint, so we're not shocked that it happens here. The residents of Jackson, Mississippi, very used to it, right? So they're not shocked either. But what's happening is that when it goes national, like this news has gone, when it goes to national, all of a sudden you have all these people who are like, oh my God, I cannot believe this is happening in Jackson, Mississippi. I cannot believe this is happening here. Again, totally disregarding that Flint happened. Like, and you have people who like are confidently saying, I can't believe this is happening. But like clearly the evidence to show that like, nah, not only can we believe this happening, we've been telling y'all it was going to happen for decades and nothing was able to be done about it. So like, again, that's just again, and I'll put the link in the description. Just so you're aware, right? Oh, let me go to this last tweet here, and then we'll kind of give our little parting shots for a second. So this is again a tweet for the city of Jackson. The city of Jackson continues to be under a boil water notice. Do not drink tap water or make ice from it. Brush teeth with boiled or bottled water. Do not give tap water to pets. Cook with bottled water or boiled water. Wash dishes and produce with boiled or disinfected water. Like they don't even want y'all washing dirty dishes with the water. Like can we say that out loud? The water is so bad. I don't want y'all washing the dirty dishes with it. This is where we're at. United States, 2022. And again, I'm telling you now, if a couple of natural disasters and things hit in certain parts of this country, the same thing would be happening. Like this is not a Jackson, Mississippi thing. This is a poor infrastructure that's been poor for a while, that's had red tape after red tape, which made it unable to actually fix it, or the money was going where it needed to go and it wouldn't get to that point. Like this is an issue, right? Like I think that one hit me the worst, right? Do wash your dishes and produce with boiled or disinfected water. Like, hey, even if you got dirty dishes, do not use the water to clean it, right? Like just that, right? So who do we blame, right? Who do we blame? Because that's really this is what happens at a time like this. Once things hits national, everyone wants to be able to say it wasn't me, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. And you have a state government who we know if you're politically inclined, we know is typically Republican leading. That's just Mississippi. It's a Republican state. It's red state. It's red. But you have a city like Jackson, which is 70-80% Black residents, which when you go with past elections, either with presidents, either with state representatives, senators, has been 70% Democrat, right? So you have this political clash that there's some concern, right? Like, is politics in the play? Like, the question is, do we think that if Jackson, Mississippi was 70% white and 70% Republican, would they have allowed the infrastructure to decay to the level they decayed? Again, I will let you guys make your own inference, but that's a concern. Then you have this issue of, hey, if the federal government is aware, like, why can't the federal government just give money and have it taken care of? Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. So the federal government can say, hey, I'm going to give you $1 million. And then I read some articles that said it's going to be like $1 million, or it's going to be like almost $2 million to really fix everything with that water plant that need to be fixed, about $2 billion. But the federal government can say, hey, I'm going to give you, let's say the federal government said, hey, Mississippi, I'm going to give you $2 billion. Here's the $2 billion. They can't be like, all right, I'm going to take all $2 billion and only give it to Jackson, right? They got to spread it across the whole state. So even if you have an instance where, and again, Mississippi, like a lot of states, especially in that southern quarter area, are one of those states that receive federal funds versus give out federal funds. Like Mississippi is one of them. So they're not in the business of being able to say, you know what, I'm going to take this and only give this to this specific area here. That's not them. That's not going to happen, yo. Like, it's the reality. So you have nothing but red tape. You have some political, clashing that's likely occurring. That's adding to it. But despite all of that, the only question you want to know is who gets hurt. And it's really the residents of Jackson, Mississippi. Those are the people who get affected. Children get affected. Adults get affected, right? Men, women, old, young, everyone in that city is going to get affected because of these continued issues with the water that they've just unfortunately had to get used to. Again, we talked about it. 2021, they had a dozen boil water notices. That is how bad that. I couldn't even imagine. I can't even imagine like 12 times out of the year having to say, "Oh, honey, we got to go boil our water again." Like that's not a city I want to live in. But unfortunately, you have socio-political issues that people can't just get up and go, right? This is reality. Like you want the largest city in that state. Do you want people to just leave? No one's going to just leave. That's impossible. And it's impossible to ask. So you have to, yes, we have to obviously be concerned about the residents, but we have to, again, put this onus on like, hey, someone in the elected officials in the government has got to take care of this. Like, this has got to be on y'all. Like, I need y'all to do something because in 2023, I don't want to have to keep boiling my water, right? I already mentioned we already know water and poor access to water is a global public health issue. It is. But it still hurts when you see it in a city right down the street from you, right? So to speak. I'm in Florida, so Mississippi's like a little bit of ways, but like it still hurts to see when you're in the United States, one of your fellow statesmen, the residents in that state, not be able to drink their own water. Like that is going to hurt, and that should hurt. That should energize people to want to be upset, to want to do more, right? So I want to share sort of tweets, and I kind of mentioned this Mazes Brown, because apparently she has a Twitter account, just so people, if you want to help, right? Because again, like, yes, we know that they got to boil water, but like, is there any way to help, right? So I want to kind of share her, a slew of her tweets, just for anyone who's interested in helping. Let's see here. So again, tons of let me make sure y'all can see that. Yep. Tons of people across the state and country have been asking how they can help with Jackson water crisis. And she's compiled a list. Operation Good is a local community organization dedicated to lending a helping hand any way they can. They have already started collecting and distributing water cases to households in the area, but they'll need help to continue. Please donate to their Cash App. And I will put their Cash App in, let's see. See if I can put their Cash App in the comments, but I'll put it in the description as well too, just to make sure. Operation Good. I'll be leaving in their comments across. Let me see. So the next one, let's see here. The Greater Allen Temple AME Church on 1650 Top Avenue here in Jackson, also accepting water drop-off donations or Cash Apps labeled under water donation, and they have a Cash App as well for the Greater Allen Temple AME. Again, this is another one. Let's see if we can get their Cash App in the comments. Greater Allen Temple. Right, and let me see if she's got any more. And then she just kind of lists some sites, and I will put a link to her Twitter account. For those who are on Twitter, her Twitter account is Masis Brown JXN. So that's MAISIE Brown JXN, right? You can follow her Twitter account. I think she has a tweet pin, right? So we'll definitely, if you can, please donate. funds, send some money over there. Our fellow residents need it. If you can't, send prayers, because they need that as well. Because even once they fix the backup of the backup water pumps, and hopefully they fix the main pumps, like hopefully they get to the point where they're back on their main pumps. Even once they fix that, that still doesn't take care of the underlying issues. And I talked about this before, like just because it looks good on the top, if you don't take care of the issues that started it all, it's not going to matter. So this is one where, just like Flint, because again, some people forgot about Flint, we cannot forget that Jackson, Mississippi has been dealing with this for over like 7 decades, right? Since 1940s, y'all. They've been dealing with this. So this isn't just going away once they get over this hump here. We have to be just as vocal and saying like, hey, like I need you to take care of Jackson, Mississippi. I need you to take care of Flint, Michigan. And really, the most important question, depending on where you're watching this from, is you want to start thinking like, man, can this happen in my city? Like, and I stay in the state of Florida, where we have hurricanes come through like it's nothing, right? So the question you want to know is, what if a hurricane come through and knock out this water, like can this happen here? Like, is this and the answer is likely yes. The answer is likely 100% yes. So you have to be very concerned. Like if you just Google water crisis in the United States, I think a lot of you guys would be very surprised at some of the search results. I think a lot of you guys will be very surprised that people have been finding, chemicals and lead and arsenic and things that will definitely have detrimental effects in all parts of the country. This has been an issue. And I hear some people, especially when I'm online, like talk about this water crisis and how water is going to be the next thing to be concerned about. And of course, you go to your local grocery store and they got aisles and aisles full of just water. They got a whole aisle dedicated to the water section. They got a whole aisle dedicated to separate companies that are commercializing bottled water. And you ask yourself, like, man, there's people in Jackson, Mississippi right now who got to boil their water and can't even use the water that's coming out their faucet to wash their dirty dishes. Like, that is a reality. And if they can't do that, like, can they? I don't even know if they can wash their clothes in a laundromat. I don't even know. Again, like, I got so many questions, so many concerns, but I just want I want to plead for everyone who comes across our video tonight or watches one of our clips. Like, we have to be very mindful that a lot of us are just one natural disaster away from being Jackson, Mississippi. A lot of us are just one natural disaster away from being Flint, Michigan. And if you think that, like, oh yeah, my water system is great, and like I think a lot of us will be in for a very rude awakening, especially here in this country. Like, yes, the United States is great and all, but do not think that we are above the problems that occur globally, because clearly we are not. So again, I am yours truly, Dr. Pierre. Thank you for joining another episode of Real Physician Reacts. I'm gonna see you guys next week.